Hey, have you heard? The Associated Press blew the lid off a government secret. They gained privileged access through an anonymous source that told of 2 government whistleblowers that exposed a secret ICE memo that instructed ICE agents to violate the Constitution and to illegally break down doors across America without judicial warrants. And they did this deliberately and concealed it from the public. This is scary. We've just discovered that ICE has been breaking down doors since May 2025 without judicial warrants. Rebecca Santana from the Associated Press just pulled out an article about ICE thwarting the Fourth Amendment to break down doors or to arrest people without judicial warrants, and that this has been some kind of rogue policy. And here's what she had to say about it. Federal immigration officers are asserting sweeping powers to forcibly enter people's homes without a judge's warrant. She goes on to say, according to an internal Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press, marking a sharp reversal of long-standing guidance meant to respect constitutional limits on government searches. So she goes on to say, the memo authorizes ICE officers to use force to enter a residence based solely on a more narrow administrative warrant, a move that advocates say collides with the Fourth Amendment protections and upends years of advice given to immigrant communities. And so she goes on to say, the shift comes as the Trump administration dramatically expands immigration arrests nationwide, deploying thousands of officers under a mass deportation campaign that is already reshaping enforcement tactics in cities such as Minneapolis. So this is a constitutional crisis in immigration enforcement. And last year I recorded an in-depth video on Know Your Rights about this very subject. And my understanding is the Fourth Amendment requires a judicial warrant for your house to be forcefully entered. There's always been a clear difference between a judicial warrant, which is signed by a judge, and the administrative warrant through the ICE official channels, or DHS. So here's the thing. The idea is that if you're in your house, they come knocking at the door and say, we've got a warrant for your arrest, you'd ask to see the warrant. And if it was signed by a judge and they had a judicial warrant, they then have the power to break down your door, basically, or forcibly enter. So the administrative warrant didn't have the power to do that, was the general understanding. Well, it seems that ICE took it upon themselves internally to create a memo to thwart the Fourth Amendment. So the question in my mind is, how many doors have they been knocking down without a judicial warrant? So here's what we know. An internal ICE memo dated the 12th of May 2025, signed by Acting Director Todd Lyons. It authorized forcible home entry based solely on I-205 administrative warrants. The policy kept secret from the public, shown only to select individuals. Contradicts official training material. And let's face it, this directive directly contravenes the core training materials of ICE because they're not supposed to break the Fourth Amendment. And what this means is thousands of new ICE trainees are being misled about what the law is. And think about the implications of this. This means that thousands of new ICE agents are out there with administrative warrants, breaking down doors without judicial warrants. How many thousands of people is this happening to? So here's my understanding of it. There were secret memos that ICE agents would be brought in to read a document. They'd read it and it would say, you can enter a house without a judicial warrant and use an administrative warrant to do that, and that's sufficient. And then apparently, once they'd read the document, it was then taken away. Presumably so that there's no paper trail to show that this was the internal policy. So if any blowback came back, they could claim ignorance. Well, what document? Show me the document. Because they'd only show that to select ICE agents further up the chain who would then instruct other new ICE agents coming in that this was the policy. And then the General Counsel for the Department of Homeland and Security determined that this doesn't prohibit forceful entry into people's residences. And apparently the Associated Press obtained a copy of the memo and the complaint, which was from the Congressional office, and it was given anonymously. And so the Associated Press has verified the authenticity of this information. And we recently saw a case of them doing this very thing on the 11th of January this year. There was a raid in Minneapolis on a Liberian man's house. The ICE officers used force, used battering rams to break down his door. And now it's been discovered that they were doing this only on the basis of an administrative warrant, not a judicial warrant. And then what happens? Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin comes out and says the targets of administrative warrants already had full due process. Give me a break. But no elaboration to show where this legal power comes from. Answer is because they don't have that power. And of course, Tricia McLaughlin ducked every time she was asked how many times ICE agents used administrative warrants to break down doors. How many people's homes have been raided without a judicial warrant? If this is accurate, this means that ICE has been surreptitiously breaching the Constitution on multiple occasions. And the question I would have is it just breaking down people's doors, or is this more widespread? And what we have to understand is this practice has only been under the Trump administration. This was not a practice used by previous administrations. This is scary because in the past, if ICE went to your house with an administrative warrant, under the Constitution, it was understood that only with a judicial warrant signed by a judge could they gain entry to your house. Well, we now discover that they've been flouting this 4 months, and this might explain some of these ICE operations where they break down even citizens' doors without a judicial warrant. I mean, we saw in Chicago the helicopter with ICE agents abseiling down, breaking down the doors, mainly of citizens, in the middle of the night, grabbing naked children and zip tying them and their parents and throwing them into trucks and holding them for extended periods and making a total mess of their homes in the apartment buildings that they had. They were trashed, and we've seen many reports of this. And so what we're seeing now is a wave of these controversial arrests all over the United States. And so the upshot is this. The government would have you believe that Minnesota, the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul are overrun with criminals. And yet, when we see the actual footage, time after time after time, is showing peaceful streets that are suddenly turned into war zones. They're turned into war zones because ICE arrives and they're breaking down the doors, presumably with only administrative warrants, so breaking the law. So they're not just lawless in what they do, they're being told to be lawless if this is accurate. What does that tell you? I thought we were told that this was all about clearing the streets and about capturing dangerous, violent criminals and taking them away. What's the term they used? Murderers and rapists and things like that. So it's just not true to say we're clearing the streets of rapists and murderers. The scary thing is, though, that it's filling the streets with some people who are criminals because we know that ICE has actually hired people with criminal backgrounds. So who is the real criminal here? People going about their business, not disturbing other people, law-abiding people. We're seeing peaceful streets turned into war zones by the very people claiming that they're putting it right. This is crazy. And then we had Judge Frimpong's ruling in California, which was restricting ICE from continuing to carry out raids, and that was overridden, known now as the Kavanaugh stops on the shadow docket, which is the way that the Supreme Court rapidly processes cases, took down the temporary restraining order that was preventing them from raiding, allowing them to raid again with impunity, with the written opinion that Kavanaugh put out, which was basically, if you don't look white, if you have an accent, if you're doing a job or working in a given area, that's sufficient grounds to change from probable cause to reasonable suspicion. They've gone even further. They're now applying that to your home. This directly contravenes the well-established understanding of the Fourth Amendment. So the question is, what recourse is there, though, against this? And here's what tells you how serious this is. 2 government employees put their careers on the line to become whistleblowers. They risked their careers to get this information to Congress and to the American people. And just think about what's been going on in Minneapolis. We saw Renee Good gunned down, execution style, by ICE. Look at the streets that are being turned into nightmares for thousands of people, thousands of normal, ordinary people. And one of the big questions is, will the courts be able to slow down or halt completely this overriding of a fundamental principle that the United States has enjoyed for centuries? So just think about it. In those videos about know your rights, when the police stop you and where your rights start and stop, the way this is running, ICE can grab you in your car and break your window just because they want to. So what do we do about this? There are 3 main things that can be done. First thing of all is document everything. Film it, stream it. Connect with people in your street. So if you witness any ICE operations, film them, post them, because this is the only way that the message is getting through on what's really happening. The second thing is you can contact your representatives, talk to senators, talk to the House of Representative member in your district. At the state level too, you can even request your governor in your state to get the police to protect you. Same with your mayor, same with any level of representation. This cuts across the whole country. This cuts across all jurisdictions. So thirdly, support legal challenges. Support the organizations that are taking these cases to court, like Democracy Docket, like the ACLU, and there are several other organizations like that. Seek them out. They need funding. They need help. Anything you can do to help bolster them helps fight this transgression. So look, this isn't about immigration policy. It clearly isn't. This is the use of terror and a force against the bulk of the American population. This is about a government agency deciding for itself that it can write its own ticket to do whatever it likes. And that means that everybody in the United States is now at risk. And just think about this. 2 government whistleblowers risked their careers to get this information out. There was also the confidential source that informed the Associated Press, who then did the right thing and published what was going on. So here's what should happen. Civil rights organizations need to challenge this in the courts. People need to raise this on forums, in social media, talk amongst themselves, talk to the representatives, talk to senators, talk to members of the House of Representatives. And we've seen what can happen. Renee Good, who was gunned down in cold blood, murdered execution style. This is what happens when people don't stand up en masse and say, no, this is not acceptable. Okay, so stay tuned. I've got a lot more to come out. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So please like, subscribe, and look, I really appreciate you watching this video. If you've stayed to this point, fantastic. Appreciate it greatly. So I hope you, your friends, your family, everybody you care about, your colleagues, stay safe in these troubled times. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and until then, bye for now.